Hello and welcome to the Media Club. I'm your host, Matt Deegan. In the club today, it's RAJAR Week. Analyst Adam Bowie and PR Supremo Megan Carver are here to run the numbers for the radio industry. Also on the programme, as the BBC celebrates record viewing figures for the Traitors, we talk about what could be happening in the celebrity version. All that plus the Sun's rebuilding its paywall, and in the media quiz, we say farewell to some big names. That's all coming up in the Media Club. Come on in. Hello guys, thanks for joining me. Nice to see you both.
So nice to be here.
Adam, who have you got to add to the Media Club list, our membership list this week?
I've got a threesome,
as it were.
Okay. I've got Holly Walsh, Helen Serafinowicz and Barunka O'Shaughnessy, and that's because Amandaland started this week, and that's the spin-off of the absolutely brilliant Motherland, which was also co-created, I think, by Sharon Horgan, and they've taken Amanda, Lucy Punch's character, and sort of dropped her in Sohar, which is South Harlesden, which I believe none of the locals call it, and she's got her fabulous mother, Joanna Lumley, and it's just brilliant. I love it. It's one of my favourite sitcoms the last few years has been Motherland, and it's been upgraded. They've moved it from BBC Two to BBC One, so yes. The BBC is obviously well behind it as well.
I'm sure they've got high hopes for it.
Yeah.
And Sharon Horgan, I mean, she's sort of everywhere doing...
She's got so much. I know on the first episode, I've only watched one episode so far, she's not credited, she's a creator, but she's not credited as a writer. I think that's because she has 101 other projects on the going. So
yes, well, all three of them are very welcome to join the club. And Megan, who's on your list?
I'm going to bring in Naga Munchetty.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, so... This week, Naga spoke about the kind of deep fake stories that existed, that popped up, I should say, about her this week. Now, the reason I want to invite Naga in is because this is happening more and more. They are really embarrassing often for the celebrity, quite distressing. And so props to Naga for going, do you know what? Someone has doctored images of me nude. This is what they look like. Let me put this front and centre and let me do some kind of exploring behind this. Essentially what's happening is that people are making these really fake, salacious clickbait stories and accompanying them with AI imagery that are often really shocking and distressing. And it's purely for clickbait. So they want to
sort of click on them and you end up on a sort of fake-looking BBC News website.
Absolutely. That is then littered with adverts. There's cookies, there's analytics, there's all sorts. They try and get as much as they possibly can from you. Then they've assumed that you're probably stupid enough to click on this story in the first place. So let's try and kind of get you to click even further into a scam.
So for someone like Naga, obviously she probably has a manager and she might have a PR person. I mean, do these people need these digital experts now to work with them?
Often in PR, when something comes through, the decision you've got to make is, do we need to act on this? If we act on this, are we going to make this bigger? So there are some individuals that have said, should I just take to my own socials and say this isn't true? Actually, probably not, because you've got millions of followers and all you're actually going to do is just amplify. Because most of these clickbaits are sitting on Facebook, will get serviced, and then people will see it and share it on going, oh my gosh, have you seen this, kind of within the industry? There is a major issue with them, but they're kind of contained. What you don't want to do is amplify.
Yeah.
A lot of them are using the BBC logos or the New York Times logos, which does help because it does mean that they can just kind of swoop in and call it for copyright. It's the high net worth individuals bit that I think is really interesting because are we going to find those individuals in blackmail cases of this is what we've created, this is what we're doing, placing those on business sites apparently and just really trying to undermine individuals or get, especially outside of the UK, they're seeing this more and more. I think there will be instances, certainly, with the increase of AI, that digital reputation teams need to swoop in a lot more. And it's an area I think that celebrities are going to have to and PRs and managers are just going to have to keep across of.
Even just detecting it, I suppose, and keeping an eye on what's going on.
Yeah.
Has it been 3 months already? The latest radio listening figures are out. Non-radio people, there's plenty about the Traitors coming up. So if you want, we have chapters now in the podcast. Just click, you can skip it. It's okay. It's something that we love, though. Adam, what did you notice from RAJAR this week?
I mean, the first thing we noticed probably was the vast number of new stations that launched, which are basically digital sibling, sister stations, offshoots. So Heart's got a load more, Capital's got an extra one. Greatest Hits has got some. We've seen from Kiss. That's really interesting. There's kind of, are you trying to shore up your brand audience by launching all of these so that cumulatively you've got the same number of listeners but maybe scattered over a number of services? I think there's also an element of trying to sort of stop the listening to playlists in Spotify and other music streaming services, so that if I want to listen to chill music, there's a number of stations now that have the word chill or calm or unwind or whatever in their titles. So the kind of words that you might put in, and there's that whole thing anyway of sort of fake artists or whatever on Spotify, where if it's sort of just some plinky plonky piano music so that I can do some background studying, we can do some AI or some cheap version of that, production version of that, and not pay quite as much. So you've got that kind of thing. I think the other big thing I think is Heart's done extremely well. They'll be very pleased in Leicester Square. They're over 10 million, I think, for the first time. And
that's kind of for the main sort of what we regard as Heart. That's your Jamie and Amanda Heart.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And that's in spite, I think, Jamie not being around for a good chunk of it. So that's growing. And then they've got now every decade from, I think, the 70s through to the 10s, plus Love, plus musicals. I have to go back to my notes now. So basically trying to remember all the Heart brands.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is becoming quite a powerhouse now. And, you know...
And also they're sort of taking over. So Absolute 80s was kind of the first of these big spin-off stations, I guess 10, 15 years ago. Heart 80s bigger than Absolute 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, they really use that power of that brand to grow these spin-offs.
No, they definitely have, and you know, and successfully, you know, which isn't always the case, because it's interesting. You compare, say, with Kiss. Now, Kiss has had a few challenges, shall we say? First of all, they've switched the FM versions of Kiss over to hits. Kiss for a long time, Kiss 100 in London, that's what a lot of Londoners would know it. Well, it's Hits 100 now. But even before that switch, you'd seen Kisstory overtake Kiss. And now Kisstory is significantly bigger than Kiss. And it's kind of like, well, which one's the main brand now? You know, where do you actually put the investment if you're Bauer? And, you know, there are now Kisstory sub-brands as well.
So you've got kind of Kiss and Kisstory being digital-only radio stations, no analog, so they're sort of the same. But I imagine Kiss has quite a lot more investment than Kisstory does, even though it's got much less of an audience.
But, you know, when you're next thinking about your breakfast presenting teams or whatever, what do you do there? So I think that those were big things. Radio 2 has done very well. I think obviously it was Zoe Ball's last period, so we won't know for a little bit how Scott gets on. I mean, I know, again, he's been covering for periods anyway.
So they're up quarter on quarter and year on year, so they're going in the right direction.
And it's, you know, there's obviously been changeover. I mean, you can go right back to sort of Ken Bruce leaving a couple of years ago now. You know, they've sort of weathered that storm, I think, pretty well, and sort of coming out the other side strongly. I think Jeremy Vine's doing really well as well. So across that station, you know, there's some sort of good stories there.
And Megan, the speech stations, always interesting seeing what they're up to, and Radio 4 and the Today programme. How have they done? Yeah,
so breakfast on Today is 5.7. It's still really, really important, those breakfast shows. For me, I mean, I absolutely love RAJAR Day, I really do, and I just love looking at the facts and knowing it all. The power of morning radio should never, ever be lost. There is no other medium where you can reach that many people. So if you just solely take Radio 1 breakfast, Radio 2 breakfast, Radio 4 breakfast, you are reaching around 17 million people, right? So if you were to get a story in the news bulletins at 8:10 or around, you know, between 8, 8:30 mentioned, that's how many people you're reaching. Now, that is a huge, huge figure. If you then get that same story on Heart with Manda and Jamie and Capital, you're adding another 7 million onto there. There's no other medium that can do that. There are, from a PR perspective, morning radio is so powerful. And there are certain shows where you see real uplift into certain products. So Chris Moyles on Radio X has always been the most incredible promoter. You can do a 15-minute interview on Radio X and you will see what your book on Amazon going up to the top, the podcast going up to the top of the charts. For books, Chris Evans has always done really, really well for books. Radio 2 Breakfast has always seen if there's a TV show on that night and you've been on Radio 2 Breakfast, you will see that correlation when you get your Barb ratings in the next day. A dream campaign really would be that you would have Radio 2, you'd have a Radio 4 mention, you'd have Moyles, and you'd then have an Evans. I mean, it's never going to happen because they don't follow each other. The other thing around radio that is really interesting, because publishers are so mourning the loss of it, is Michael Ball on Saturday.
Okay.
Because that show used to absolutely shift books. He had such an engaged and book reading audience, and he gave it so much space and love to talk about, and literally every single week with publishers are like, oh, it's such a shame we don't have Michael Ball anymore. The other thing around radio
is also because kind of telly is just too broad. There's too many things on, then the numbers are low, even for like the one show does the best, but it is still a smaller proportion than they used to be.
Well, I think it's really important to distinguish. This is not about radio versus TV, because if you then took in the evenings, I mean, TV absolutely trounces radio.
Yeah.
It's incomparable. It's just lifestyle. And everyone has their breakfast, their morning routines. Outside of what you're listening to, you absolutely have your clear structure of what you do each day. And so when you find your radio home, that's it.
I was watching, there's been quite a few films being promoted at the moment. Bridget Jones is kind of doing the rounds. A Cameron Diaz movie was out the other week.
Netflix.
And I saw a lot of social, and Cameron Diaz was in pretty much every radio station, on every radio station breakfast show. Is it easier now basically it's Global Bauer or the same floor for the BBC, that actually you can whip these people around all these stations?
It's definitely easier now they're in the same buildings, definitely. What's great around Global is that they have a bit of a central system as well. So you have a conversation with them. Collectively you work out where and what networks would be the best for them to go on. And it's very swift when you're in there. They've got it set up perfectly, from the meet and greet to let me take you to every station that you're going to talk to. And like I said, I mean, that's a quarter of the population that you can reach if you do all those shows. I mean, that's 5 shows.
Adam, it's super efficient now, isn't it? I mean, radio is an efficient medium across everything, ads, programming, the lot. I mean, it's very different to what it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, there's good parts and there's bad parts of that. I mean, definitely in terms of getting stuff done, I mean, it feels like it's fewer people doing more stations. I mean, at the same time as we've seen all these new digital services launch, there are fewer people programming them, which is interesting. But the medium probably does need to scale itself, to meet the fiscal and financial and be the sensible needs of it. I think that the challenge is where new people are going to come from, in terms of talent and so on. And it gets harder to come into the industry. If you think about how many services are coming from London, if we look at just the wider part of it, the entirety of Global effectively is coming from London. Bauer still has some local breakfast shows on hits, but we've seen Global in the last quarter, well, certainly the stories are coming that their drive time shows are going, and you can't imagine. I think it's probably a bit tricky for Bauer because some of those breakfast shows are probably really quite strong in their areas, but someone running the rule over it might then say, okay, we'll have it all come from London.
Yeah, again. It's very sad. I think later this month, a lot of the global regional shows go that perform pretty well. I was looking at the numbers for this book and looking at the Heart stations, and those drive time shows, good performers, but it's hard to argue with the cost savings of centralising that.
Yeah, and the profit margins within that. The ad revenues behind radio are really healthy. The Radio Centre reported a 5% increase last year. There was something like 360 million spent in ad revenue from Jan to June last year. The National Lottery alone, this blew my mind, National Lottery alone spent in 2023, so I don't know what they did last year, but they spent £20 million just on ad listening. And the reason for that, going kind of full circle, is RAJAR, right? Because RAJAR gives such good data and such good stats that it means brands have real confidence in the power of radio to reach and resonate.
I mean, RAJAR is an odd thing. It often gets sort of slagged off. Diary methodology, predominantly diary methodology, but it's backed by BBC Commercial Radio, by the ad agencies themselves. It's in everybody's interests for it to work and be successful.
And it's not just a book now, is it? Because I think for people like me that started in radio, over decades ago, we joke about the fact it's a book, this paper book and a pencil, but it isn't that.
Adam, completely. It's not just a physical diary.
No, it's not. It's probably, I think, more digital than physical diaries. There's also meters. There's a number of different things now. That the methodology changed a bit during lockdown, and they've kept on some of those changes.
So it's got people like a phone app, aren't they, that sort of listens to the background?
Background listening and so on. So I think it's the only thing arguably RAJAR isn't really measuring is as we see, and it's probably certainly the case in some speech radio, you're seeing a transition to podcasts and even on-demand listening of the same programs. A Radio 4 program, I don't listen to it at the media podcast.
What?
Media show?
Media
there are
show?
other ones that are available.
Never heard of it.
At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but maybe I listen to it later on. And, capturing that kind of things, or the Archers, which is obviously a big one, but maybe not listening at sort of lunchtime or whatever. So, there are always challenges, and we see the complications of TV as well, but undoubtedly it's robust. And the comparison with digital, where everyone's counting their own marking their own homework.
That's such an interesting point, because with TV we have the consolidated, so obviously we know what people have watched within the 24-hour period and the 7 days afterwards. We should know from podcast data, Archers, etc., what those downloads are, and it is a shame we can't join those up.
Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it? It's sort of, the data all exists, and it exists in sort of different systems, and if you're an advertiser, you can ask and you can sort of see it. I mean, RAJAR, this survey isn't particularly a podcast survey, but they do talk about podcast listenership, and so about 22% of the population listens to podcast each week. It's the highest that they've recorded. Is that a good number, or 15 years into podcasting, is that still a bit small?
I think it's not bad. I think, podcast measurement, and, there are a number of different measures of it. So I'd say this one's probably a little bit lower than, Ofcom does a measure. RAJAR even does its own separate measure. And you've got to be really careful, because you don't want to compare and contrast methodologies too much. I think what you find is it just ticks up slowly. I think, podcast has never had that sort of hockey stick kind of thing. Now, you might think it has, given the, at times, insane number of new podcasts that are launching, and that's certainly doesn't seem to be stopping. I mean, there's still a lot going. If you're a certain kind of person, if you're a comedian, you've probably got a podcast anyway. Let's start there. It's a transition, undoubtedly, and we've got this now complex thing of there's radio, there's podcasts, there's YouTube. Look at us. We've got the cameras here. The intersection is blurry. I know you've written about this quite recently, that it's a real sort of mishmash, and it becomes really hard, I think, then to say, okay, what is this piece of content? Is it radio, podcast, video, something else?
There is different methodology for so many different subsections of podcasting. So YouTube, exactly that. Shits and Gigs, when you look at Edison, are absolutely in the top 10, 20 podcasts listened in the whole of the UK. You wouldn't find them on an Apple chart. Apple app demographic probably is a bit older, and so when you look at their top chart, it's a reason why the politics and the news are at the top. That would be very different if you were to look on a Spotify or YouTube. Does
talent think of it as a podcast or a show or a performance?
They think of it as a podcast for sure, even if it's filmed.
Before we move on, I think we've been too positive. Adam, is there any bad news, anything negative, anything people should keep an eye on?
I think, you always look at younger listeners a little bit. Some of the speech stations did fall. Look at something like Talk. I think they're probably still finding their feet a little bit after the sort of transition from sort of Talk TV effectively. Overall, listening did dip as well. I think we're at 87%. Now it gets complicated because we've had population changes last year, so effectively the new census data got fed into RAJAR, and it kind of bumped up the numbers. So in overall numbers terms, they still look good, but percentage wise, we're there's a bit there. So to keep tabs on, I think.
Chris Evans is not had the greatest.
Yeah,
so he's at what, 750,000?
But definitely under 1 million.
Going to be a bit disappointing for them over there. On the flip side, props to Samantha Moore in the Six Music team.
Yes.
Because it just keeps growing and going and going. I mean, what a story for Six Music, you know, faced with closure. I remember the absolute jubilation when they hit 1 million, you know?
Well, I think Six Music's interesting. Six Music has a very activist fan base who are not so keen on a change. We've got Nick Grimshaw becoming the Six Music breakfast presenter. But the changes they've made have worked, haven't they?
Oh, yeah, unquestionably. Yeah. I mean, I think they're not quite at their peak, but they're not far off it still. And, you know, that's an incredible success story.
And kept absolutely their values to that core. And, when Nick came in covering, he was so accepted so quickly because he's a phenomenal broadcaster and genuinely loves that music. You know, it's perfect.
Don't go anywhere. We're going to be talking about Celebrity Traitors and the Sun subscription plan. See you in a sec.
Hello Media Club listeners, Patrick here from Podcast Discovery, the podcast marketing company, where this week we've been thinking about missed opportunities. You might think that everyone you know has a podcast, and that's because it's true. Over 30,000 different podcasts released at least one new episode last month, and competing against all that can be tough. The last thing you need is to leave in-house opportunities on the table. To speak to us about how to maximise your podcast marketing, head to podcastdiscovery.com. That's podcastdiscovery.com.
Where do you listen to your podcasts? Maybe on the commute, in the car, or you might be watching me on your screen now. Hello. Here's a surprising fact. More people than ever are watching podcasts on YouTube. So if you're thinking about starting a podcast or already have one, adding a video element could open up a whole new audience. That's where Podshop comes in. With expert engineers, a purpose-built recording studio and top-tier equipment, Podshop makes it easy to create high-quality video content that helps your podcast reach a wider audience. So whether you're new to podcasting or a seasoned pro, Podshop Studios is the perfect setting for your video podcast. And for a limited time, enjoy 25% off your first booking at Podshop Studios with the code Media Club. Don't miss out. Visit podshoponline.co.uk today and take your podcast to the next level. Welcome back. Here's what we've been talking about in the Media Club this week. Reuters reported that ITV is in an early stage talks with Redbird IMI about a potential merger of their production business. This could involve ITV Studios splitting from ITV PLC to enable the All3Media owner to take a stake in both. All a bit complicated, but it's definitely something coming around ITV. Watering down copyright law for the sakes of AI is a huge mistake. That's according to the FT's policy chief Matt Rogerson. He told MPs on Wednesday that the government shouldn't accidentally change a gold standard of UK copyright law that's existed since 1709. A Lord's amendment could stop that happening next week. And The Sun has launched a new paywall, Sun Club, costing £1.99 a month, and will give readers access to premium content, including Jeremy Clarkson's columns. Megan, are they going to get subscribers at just under £2 a pop?
Yeah, I think they will. I mean, essentially, it's a partial paywall, right? So The Sun tried to do a paywall before, and it wasn't successful for them at that point. I think people weren't used to thinking, I'm going to have to pay for my digital news. But Mail Plus did it last Jan. That's $4.99. This isn't new at all in any way or form. And you're right, it's certain columns. So it is Jeremy Clarkson, it's Jane Moore, it's Harry Cole, so political editor. The offers that they have, so the very successful £9.50 holidays that exists, that's always been with The Sun, will now sit behind.
So it's sort of the things that make people buy the newspaper, they're sort of rolling into making them buy the digital newspaper.
And it's and I think it's good how they're calling it the club. Like, I get what they're doing there. I think there's some really interesting bits around it because it's not a new concept. I completely see how this works. And for certain columns and articles and interviews, brilliant. But I do see a slight problem that they might come into, which is at the weekend, for example, on the cover of Fabulous magazine that comes with The Sun on Sunday, Kelsey Parker did an interview about her. She was cover star about her pregnancy. So yesterday I saw that the Sun Club, when it was announced, was saying, here is the interview. That's behind the club paywall, and the journalist who wrote it, promoting that. Absolutely great. That seems really, really smart, really fair. You can go and buy it on a Sunday, or after that you have to be a member of the club. The potential frustration here for the Sun is that the lines and the key lines from that story have already been picked up by other digital sites. So you can just click on the Mirror. You can click I agree to have all your ads fed to you and for them to take all of your cookies and analytics and the whole shebang. And whilst they credit the Sun, you essentially have got the key points, the stories, the issues with the trolls. So I guess the question is, are readers going to be satisfied with that top line version and get all they need, or are they going to be more inclined to go and pay for that in-depth interview? I guess only time will tell on that. Do
you think about whether it's free or paywall when you've got a certain amount of time with a celebrity and you've got to choose which title gets them? Do you think about we won't get the distribution because it's not free to air? Yeah,
you do. And sometimes when you're discussing a potential big interview or feature, you have the conversation up front and say, can we do this and remove the paywall? And that will be part of the conversation at the beginning. Or it'll be like, no, this will be behind paywall.
Adam, do you think we've reached a limit to how much money we're paying, or just everyone used to it now and it's like, hey, I've got to stump up?
I think what's interesting is, first of all, the price point, $1.99. I hadn't really clicked until I actually checked. Actually, someone was literally a machine next to me in a supermarket buying the Sun. It was £1.10. So that's the cover price today of a regular Monday to Friday copy of it. And that's at the cheap end. I think the Mirror's about $1.70. What we're really talking about is a price that's a little under 2 copies of the Sun. So in that respect, it's a bit of a bargain, really, in terms of compared to the paper product. I think it's who the audience is today, and I'd be interested to know what the analytics are of people who visit the Sun's website. Are they more in line with the paper? Obviously, the Sun doesn't publish ABCs any longer, so really unclear probably how many papers they're necessarily putting out. I'm sure advertisers maybe know that, but and more to the point, what the demographics are and what the Sun brand means today, because my suspicion is it's getting older, and so you're talking about an audience who maybe they've decided that once their weekly paper round bill comes in, it's sort of north of 10-15 quid or whatever it comes to now. Maybe they're cancelling it, and so can we retain some of those people for £2 a month? And that might be the sort of the maths that's going on in the background. And whether it stays at that price, that feels like an introductory price to me a little bit. I think it's interesting because I think the Mail has done quite well at sort of more like $4.99, and it feels like we'll onboard people, a bit like Disney Plus did, and when it launched, launched at a very punchy price and very quickly ramped up the price.
The other thing they haven't done is they haven't gone, right, we're putting all showbiz behind, which is really, really smart. The Sun Showbiz team now, under Ellie Henman, is very, very different to how it has been. It is still breaking stories, but it is not salacious, it's not mean, it's not doing all it can to get a story. And so when a breaking story happens, it is so often the Sun that still leads it and still pushes that through. So I don't think they'll ever put that on the club.
Yeah, it'd be interesting that split between what stays in front of and behind the paywall.
Yeah.
Third season of The Traitors is over, highest ratings yet for the finale. And now attention turns to the Celebrity Edition. Megan, last time you were in the club, you made a prediction.
Go on.
For someone who would be on a Celebrity Traitors. Can you remember who you said?
Did I?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, no.
You said Martin Lewis.
Oh yeah, I'd love Martin Lewis.
Do you think he's going to do it this time?
I don't think so. I haven't heard his name rumoured.
Who is on the list? Who do we think is going to be in?
So having just spoken about the Sun and how great the showbiz team is, obviously, my job as a PR is to know things. So I'm going to have to be really careful in this piece because I do know stuff, but I'm going to have to pretend I know nothing.
Yes.
So that is why we go, thankfully, we have the Sun. So we can talk about who the Sun's TV and showbiz teams have reported. So they are saying Stephen Fry is the first person to be rumoured. I mean, obsessed. Just phenomenal. They are also saying that there is Claire Balding. Amazing. Danny Dyer, the dad, not the daughter. They're talking about Alan Carr. They're talking about Daisy May Cooper. They're talking about Robert Peston. There are some rumours around Richard Osman. He has categorically ruled himself out, and I believe him on that. I think he is probably too knowing, too knowledgeable of the format.
And he knows all the production teams.
And knows all the production team. He's probably...
Insta vote out, probably. You're a traitor, you're out.
He's probably, so close to the production team that he's having great conversations with them. Interestingly, none of the people rumoured have done any reality shows before.
Yes.
So we're not going to see any Love Islanders here. This is not going to be anything like the American one, which is pure reality shows. Well, season 2 was. So if you've ever done a Bravo show, you're now going to be on the American Traitors. And we're not going to be having that. over here.
These are proper celebrities.
These are proper. This is like BAFTA red carpet, And I will also challenge and say this is not reality show. The Traitors. Traitors is a game show, and it's not a reality show because we are not forcing them to live their lives as normal, and we watch them morning, noon, and night. They don't. They are driven onto set each day. They are there to play a game, and they will have fallings out one day because they're suspected, someone is a traitor, and the next day they won't. So it is arguably going to be, not even arguably, it is going to be huge. 10 million watched that final.
I mean, it sounds, when you go through all those names, there are people who are, I'm sure, offered lots of things who instantly turn them down. Yeah. Why are they picking this one? Is it because it's a bit more like a normal TV show? I
think you are only saying yes to this if you love the Traitors and you are just desperate to play. You've got to want to play the Traitors to go in this because
it's fans.
It's fans. It would be the most miserable thing to be on this show going, sorry, what's this? What do I do now? I've never seen this. Where am I at? You've got to want to do it, and you've got to know in advance whether you want to be a faithful or a traitor. You've got to think about what you think is going to be your gameplay, and then probably
but
fail.
Aren't all of them going to want to be traitors? I mean, literally all of them.
Wow, it's interesting.
I mean, I don't think there's really that. I know they say they want to be faithful, the sort of the regular version. I think once you get to the, oh my goodness, they want to be. They're going to be so disappointed if they don't feel.
Isn't the game be a faithful until the middle, then become a traitor?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, 100%.
This is why I wanted Martin Lewis to do it, because there's no more trusted man. Like there are polls that
destroy his entire career if it turns out he's walking around lying, as he's getting his 25,000 steps in around the castle grounds.
Can you imagine? When it comes to trust, there is no one else this country trusts more than Martin Lewis. I mean, he has to do it.
Is this the peak of the Traitors? Will this series be?
No, it'll keep growing.
Okay.
It will keep growing because every series is different. Every series, someone thinks they've got something different. They bring in little twists. They'll change it. They're filming it in the spring. They haven't announced when it's going to air yet, but surely it's got to be around end of August, September, because before Strictly, because
Well, there's going to be a lot of long lens photography up in Scotland to snap all these people, I imagine.
Yeah, they've got a right to roam up there. You can go. You can walk across those private fields legally in Scotland. I'm just mentioning that.
I think once they start filming, there'll be leaks aplenty. But actually, that's not a problem because it's just going to make people even more excited when they see those names going, oh wow, okay.
I think it's going to work very well. Don't go anywhere. Media Quiz is next. Okay, Adam and Megan are still with me. Just enough time for the media quiz before we go. This week, it's entitled Exit Stage Right. A few venerable media names have announced they are leaving their top jobs this week. Can you name them? It's the best of three, so buzz in with your name if you think you know the answer. So, Megan, you will say...
Megan.
And Adam, you will say...
Adam.
Let's play Exit Stage Left. Right, question number one. After 36 years, who is leaving Sky News?
Megan.
Adam. Oh, I think Megan just ahead there.
I thought that was fairly even, but I'll take it. Kay Burley's leaving.
Yes.
Kay Burley's leaving after over 1 million minutes.
This was a great stat.
It was a great stat.
Adam, entirely made up, or did you try and work it out?
I haven't, but I do feel the need to go back and just see if that's possible.
With a stopwatch.
There's a lot of checking to do. I mean, she's done a long time there.
What a titan. What an incredible career. I have 3 thoughts on this, if I may. I mean, firstly, those 36 years. She helped Murdoch launch this in 1988. She's covered every single story in that time, which is just incredible. So secondly, she broke the news herself. In this industry, it is impossible to keep things a secret. There is always people that know. No one knew. So props there. Thirdly, so as she announces, fair bit of chatter online, where's she going, what she's doing. Some people think, is she going abroad? What's she up to? She's obviously said she wants to travel a bit more. But a few hours after leaving, Dundas Communications announced on their socials that they were very thrilled to be working with Kay Burley on an exciting year ahead. So there's definitely something coming. And if she's got UK PR, she's definitely doing something in the UK. I mean, could she be a traitor?
Is her travel to Scotland?
Is she going up there? Who knows?
She'd be a great great grab.
Yeah, wouldn't
Celebrity
she?
Hunted, didn't she, I think?
She did.
Well, and that might rule her out because that is that a reality show?
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't know.
So we'll
see. We'll see.
But
she's got something on the horizon.
Okay, question number 2. Who is leaving the Great British Bake Off? It's not talent in front of the camera. It's Love Productions co-founder Richard McKerrow. That's a bit of a surprise, but I don't think he's entirely done with telly yet, is he?
No, I think not. And obviously, I think Love is these days owned pretty much by Comcast, so you don't know whether, behind the scenes, I think his partner in Love previously had left last year as well. So there's,
earn-out stuff.
Yeah, try and do something different, rather than do another sort of 10,000 hours of Bake Off or
just being
pottery or whatever.
Being sick of cake after so long. I don't want to look at any more
sewing.
cake.
I don't know all the other ones in there. Arsenal.
Okay, question number 3. Finally, to flip it on its head, which podcast production company has hired a BBC Sounds exec?
Adam.
Oh, yes.
That's Persephonica.
I forgot I had to say my name then.
Yes, it's Persephonica. Who have they hired?
I forgot
Fiona Hanlon.
Yes.
So Fiona Hanlon. So she's been at the BBC for a number of years. I worked with her at Radio 1. She was on Grimmie's Breakfast Show. And she went over to BBC Sounds. She's exceptional. She's great. Persephonica have done really, really brilliant things since Dino set it up, obviously with the newsagents, but now with Political Currency. And they launched Crosswires last year. The success they've had of Miss Me with the BBC, which is soon to go on a live show.
Tour, yep.
Live tour. So they're based in Sheffield and really making strides, continuing to make strides. And so Fiona Hanlon, who was married to Dino,
yes,
joining formally as MD is completely brilliant for them all.
I think it's nice that it's a sort of family business as well.
I know.
But
really lovely.
But excellent hire.
Excellent hire.
And kind of interesting. Obviously, Dino very news based, was BBC newscast originally, and Fiona is more entertainment side. So it's interesting what they do next and how that grows.
I think that's the key. I think both of them are incredibly tapped in to trends and helping set those trends and knowing who to be targeting and who to have the conversations with. They're both incredibly well connected, both very creative. This is going to be really strong.
Okay, that's a draw. I'll let you have a draw this week. As a joint prize, you both have to try and get yourself on Traitors, celebrity or non-celebrity, and that'd be the true.
Would be awful.
The true win.
I'd go in there super confident and be straight out. Probably wouldn't get off the train or whatever.
Thank you both, Adam. How can people keep up with your work and ratings?
AdamBowie.com. Probably the easiest.
And Megan, how can people keep up with what Carver's doing at the moment?
Carver PR on Instagram or the website.
Excellent. Thank you both. And thank you to you for watching as well. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. Make sure you click that follow button or the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, so you'll get an episode every week. My name's Matt Deegan. The producer was Matt Hill. It was a Rethink audio production with video support from Podcast Discovery. I'll see you next week.